What if you could rise above the noise? Not by shouting louder, but by showing up with visibility, respect, and brand preference. On today's episode of the Podcast Interview Marketing Show, I sit down with my friend David Newman to unpack the concept of market eminence. It's his new book. Now, this isn't about being famous. It's about being the one your ideal clients think of first, trust most, being truly a category of one. You see, in a world saturated with AI-generated content, David breaks down how to move from being ignored to being extraordinary. It's by shifting from this how-to content to how-to-think leadership. We dig into actionable examples and thought exercises you can use on your next podcast interview. Now, if you're a professional monetizing your expertise, market eminence is exactly how you're going to do it in this AI world. David shares how to create magnetic messages that attract the right clients and repel the wrong ones. Plus, he gives 3 great questions to help you sharpen your voice and clarify your value today. If you're serious about just not getting more exposure, but getting better results from every conversation, well, this interview is your playbook. David, I am so excited to talk with you and share it with the world here. So it was about a year ago, I think we were sitting in Texas talking, and you brought up this idea of market eminence, right? What's ordinary to you is amazing to others. And I was spellbound as you were unpacking it, but could we start there? Maybe what do you mean by this whole idea of market eminence?
Sure. So I guess to back up half a step, Tom, the problem that we're solving is how do we get noticed? How do we get ourselves, our company, our product, our service, our expertise, our cause? How do we get noticed in a hyper noisy, AI fueled world of crazy? And so what used to work, everyone now has these tools at their disposal, including our friend ChatGPT. So there has never been a more flood of noise and articles and newsletters and podcasts and all kinds of other things. So I broke it down in thinking about the companies, the brands, and the people, meaning specifically the CEOs, the founders, the experts, who really rise above the noise. What's the formula that they have dialed in? And the formula to me is visibility plus respect plus brand preference. And taken together, those 3 are the building blocks or the components of market eminence. So visibility meaning getting seen by the right people in the right places. Respect, which is about resonating very strongly with the core group of people that you want to influence and that you want to lead. And then brand preference, this is kind of my favorite one of the 3. Brand preference is a combination of differentiation and positioning so that it's risky, dangerous, and dumb to hire anyone other than you.
Well, and I love how you drilled that down, because I see so many people that are like, well, how do I get noticed? How do I break through the noise? And it's like, they're just making noise. As my daughters would say, they get out there and they look thirsty.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't have any respect. They don't have that trust, that authority. And they're almost, the punchline, right? They're famous for being famous. And there's that difference between, I want to be an influencer, as opposed to I want to be the expert. I want to be the practitioner. I want to have market eminence. And I love how you said where people, it'd be crazy not to pick you.
Exactly.
So talk about that a little bit more. And what does that all go into there? I mean, how can you have when people say, they bring something up like David Newman, right? So it's almost like a category of one that other people compare themselves to.
That's right. Exactly. So it's funny, actually, that you mention, indirectly, you're mentioning our friends, the category pirates. I actually quote them in the book because one of my favorite quotes that really kind of stuck with me is, and it's really one that's central to everything that they do as far as category design, thinking about thinking is the most important kind of thinking. And that quote is right there attributed in the book in one of the sections about brand thinking. So, the way that people decommoditize themselves, the way that they separate from every other company, every other CEO, every other founder that either does what they do or even worse, looks like they do what they do, because it's very easy to be interchangeable, right? And it's like one consulting firm looks like every other consulting firm. One law firm looks like all the other law firms. One bank looks like all the other banks. And so what will separate you in this visibility stage is stop sharing how-to content. How-to content based on information is done. It is dead. Stick a fork in it. Game over. Chat GPT, all the AI tools are way better at creating any kind of how-to content than you or I ever have a chance, ever have a hope, rather, to compete with. So what kind of content is left? What kind of content is uniquely human? Well, the first kind of content is not based on information, but it's based on insight. Human insight based on your personal experience, your war stories, your battle scars, your lessons learned, what you've done, what you've seen, the roads that you've traveled, and then sharing that authentically and with transparency and without ego. So that higher level, strategic, advisory, insight-based content. In other words, don't just give people how to, give them how to think. Give them the mental frameworks to see the world differently and to see the world in a way that might be more valuable and more insightful to help them. Second kind of thinking is belief shifting content. So helping people with what to believe and, more importantly, what not to believe. So this is where we separate the signal from the noise. We separate the myths from the truths. The really fun stuff is when you separate the myths from the half-truths. Like, it sounds good, it sounds smart, but the world doesn't work that way anymore. So pulling back the curtain, if you will, on outdated practices, things that don't serve your target market, in fact, things that might harm your target market. And these are usually what I call the unmentionables. These are the elephants in the room, right? Imagine if you had a law firm that started to rail and rant against hourly billing, and 95% of law firms still use hourly billing. Imagine if you were a performance management company or consultant, and you said, you know what? Performance management is a total waste of time. Your employees hate getting them. Your managers hate giving them, and they don't actually improve performance. People would say, whoa, what's going on? Who is this heretic? Who let this nutbag in the room? But then you would have what you want to replace it with. And what's your better vision of the world? What's the smarter replacement for that outdated, no longer serving clients technology or practice or philosophy? So what to believe, what not to believe. The third area, and this is where people can have a lot of fun, is how to get ready for what's coming next. So I call this either future casting or trend spotting, but what can you do to be the beacon and to be the lighthouse that illuminates 3 months, 6 months, 12 months down the road what's coming, what's going to be different, what's going to be outmoded, what new opportunities will come, what new threats are waiting right under the waterline. And because I'll tell you why this is important, Tom. High-level people, whether you're selling to executives or entrepreneurs or government or healthcare, high-level people, they hate being surprised, they hate being ambushed, and they hate being sideswiped. If there was something that they could have seen 3 months or 6 months ahead, but they weren't aware, they didn't have the bandwidth or the insight to see this kind of monster hiding under the bed, and they get bitten in the butt by that monster, but it could have been avoided, they are not happy. They're upset. So you need to be the early warning system. You need to be the early warning system that says, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now, here's the trend. Here's the pattern recognition. Here's where this is going. And here's how to get ready so that you don't get bitten in the butt. So in that sense, you are helping them do what the great business philosopher Wayne Gretzky recommended: go to where the puck is going to be, not where the puck is today.
And I love that because it's like, as you said, if you have got, the 6 hacks to make 6 figures in 6 seconds, no thought leader talks about that, right? It's a stupid blog, and it's probably something that ChatGPT could answer quicker than reading the blog. But everything you're talking about draws on your experience, your thought leadership, right? Those are connecting the dots, which is something that is human, but is also valuable when just routine knowledge is a commodity.
Amen. Absolutely right.
And one of the things I like too is you talk about being contrarian, right? Like you said, the billable hours, right? This is wrong. The world is broken. At least having a strong point of view that people listen to, right? When you say something like that, they're either going to agree with you or disagree with you, but they're not going to ignore you because it's something that stands out. What's it? Seth Godin talks about the purple cow, right? And that contrarian. So unpack that. How can you be contrarian without being objectionable?
Well, what a great word. So I want to put that word, let's put that word objectionable front and center. Mm-hmm. And I want to compare and contrast that with the word polarizing and divisive. Because as soon as I tell a CEO or a founder, it's like, okay, we're going to be polarizing and divisive, they usually want to put the brakes on and say, okay, guys, we're taking 10. We're doing a coffee break. And they take me aside. They go, are you insane? We don't want to be divisive. We don't want to be polarizing. And here's how I reassure people. I said, imagine we're installing a magic gate, a very powerful electromagnetic magic gate around your business. What this gate is designed to do, it's an electromagnet. It is pulling in with great intensity your best fit clients, prospects, talent, partners, media, podcasts, investors, possibly even acquirers, people who might buy your company down the road. And because it's magnetic, it has 2 polarities. So the other side of this magnet, when you turn that on, it is equally powerful at repelling all the bad fit prospects, clients, customers, talent, investors, acquirers, media partners. So they go, I still don't know about this. That's okay. Let's talk about the bad fits. We literally do this on the whiteboard when we're doing a strategic work session with a client. I said, we're going to list out, you're going to tell me all of the nightmare clients, all the terrible employees, all the bad hires, all the people that gave you money and were then a nightmare to have to deal with. I said, let's do the list. And they say, okay, they don't share our vision of the future. They're not aligned with our goals. They're unethical. For employees, they come in late. They leave early. They don't do what they promise. There's a lack of integrity. There's a lack of ethics. They're not hard workers. They're trying to kind of slide by with the minimum viable effort. And we list all of this. And I say, okay, let me go back to what I was saying a moment ago. We've built this electromagnetic gate. These are all the people that we're keeping out. How do you feel about that now? And they look at the list, Tom, and you can see their body language. Their shoulders come down. They look at the list. They're reading up and down the bullets, and they go, oh my God, that would be great. If we never had another terrible hire, if we never brought on another nightmare client from hell, if we never had another investor who was impossible to please, that would be amazing. And I said, yes, it would. And welcome to Market Eminence. So that's what that does. Now, as far as the contrarian slant, for people listening and watching, I'm going to give you a toolkit right here, right now, 3 super quick questions that you can start to develop your own contrarian slant right now after listening to this show. The first question, the first sort of thought exercise for you is, what conventional wisdom in your field do you secretly, behind closed doors, do you secretly think is completely wrong, but you've never publicly challenged? So we're going to take your inside voice that you have in your internal meetings. You say, oh my God, we're not doing that. That's a terrible thing. We would never do that. That lacks ethics. That lacks integrity. That doesn't really work anymore. But you've been like, shh, don't tell the rest of the world. Now is your opportunity to tell the rest of the world. This means in your next LinkedIn post, in your next newsletter, in your next sales conversation, in your next webinar or video that you post on YouTube, you need to talk about that conventional wisdom that is not serving clients. Second question, kind of a different doorway into a similar set of things. What harsh truth about your industry are clients desperate for someone to finally acknowledge openly? So it's kind of like an open secret. Clients all know that hourly billing is not serving them. Why? Because, well, the longer it takes, the more we charge. Well, isn't the value of the project, isn't the value of the program, the quicker we get it done, the value goes up, not the longer it. So anyway, you get the idea. What harsh truth? It's the harsh truth question. The third question is, what strong point of view do you already have and that you already hold genuinely, that you truly believe, that makes industry insiders uncomfortable but resonates deeply with your ideal clients? The best way to reverse engineer this one, Tom, when clients come to us, and this depends on your business, but for most B2B businesses, when clients come to us, it's not their first rodeo. They've tried to solve this some other way, some other how. They've hired another agency. They've hired another consultant. God forbid, they went to another podcast booking agency because they call themselves podcast booking agencies. There's only one interview marketing company that I know of. And it's not their first rodeo. So all of those complaints that you've heard from other people that you are now the safe refuge, and they say, oh, we worked with this branding firm. We worked with this podcast booking agency. We hired this advertising firm. And here's what happened, right? So you're collecting, and maybe you haven't been intentionally collecting, but you'll start now. You're starting to collect all the things that are missing, funky, broken, and sad with the competitive landscape that you're operating in. Those are the things that you can start to rail against, because obviously they came to you because they weren't happy with the other competing and alternative options. So those 3 questions will really help you develop your contrarian slant. And then the bravery step is put them out there. Next article, next blog post, next sales conversation, next video or webinar, and you will be on your path to market eminence.
And I love how you dissect that, right? So the first thing is the people that they're just saying what describe themselves as, I say, right? We're better, faster, cheaper. All you're saying was we're just the same, right? And it's this idea of you're spot on with the magnetic marketing. People want to attract more. That's not how magnets work. They attract the right thing, repel the wrong thing. Yeah. And what you're doing here is optimizing for impact, and I would say profits, not activity, right?
Yes.
And we've all seen this, right? We get the emails. I can get you 50 more leads today. I can get you 40 more conversations. I'm not optimizing for those, right? I'm optimizing for value, which comes from profits, which is making it clear to people who you are, who you aren't. And I think it's so important that we all believe the same things, right? Truth, justice, the American way, apple pie, whatever it is. That tells me nothing. Tell me what you reject. And I think you especially, David, you're one of these guys that I don't think could be convicted by a jury in the United States, right? You couldn't find a dozen people that don't know you and love you. So you don't have to be a jerk to put those questions out there and just say, I reject this, or I question
right.
this. Why does everybody do that? And once you sow that seed and paint the world in a different way, people can't see it the other way.
That's right. Exactly right. I'll just share one more, and this is a little bit of an extreme version, but I love it so much. Big surprise there. There was an abstract expressionist in the 1940s. I forget who it was. It wasn't Jackson Pollock, but it was someone like that. And their art was like very edgy and very extreme and not accepted by the public at all. They're very famous now today, but I forget which one it was. The quote is, I want you to be either repulsed or exhilarated. So his art, he literally wanted you to be either repulsed or exhilarated when you saw his art and when you experienced his vision of what art should be and could be. So that takes it even to another level that I think our mission in part is to either, have our audience, the wrong audience should be repulsed, and the right audience, the right fit audience should be exhilarated when they come in contact with us.
Yeah. I'm awful at quotes on this, but there's something in the Bible of something about, be hot or cold, because warm water gets spit out. And it's the same way. It's like there's worse than things than being told yes or no. Right. We go for a yes. We'll accept a no. But the worst thing is to be ignored. And I think playing this safe of I'm just like everybody else and trying to carve out my little piece of the world. Right. Yeah. Nobody knows who you are. They don't know what you do, what you believe. Yeah. And I would even say from the customer standpoint, but also from the referral standpoint, right? How can I refer you if I don't understand what you believe and your, that you've got a differentiation there?
Yes, absolutely right.
And thank you for the way you wrote this book. And it's different than a lot of other books, that it is actionable, and these thought exercises that you put out there, right? It's one thing to put this idea of, yes, let's have market eminence and get their, the visibility, respect, brand preference. But talk to me about why you did the 22, strategies around it, and really to have people look at that of the thought exercises to make it really actionable. Oh
yes. So this is, this is not a groundbreaking thought, I don't think, but it's so frustrating to me. For decades, gurus have written books, and don't get me wrong, I love gurus, right? I love Seth Godin. I love all of these other people that we're following, Gary Vee. The advice has been, starting with Seth, that you already mentioned, Purple Cow, be remarkable. Gary Vee says, just put out amazing content. It's like, well, could someone just sit down for a minute and could you define remarkable? Could you define amazing? What is amazing? 'Cause I think my content's amazing. Tom, I think you think your content's amazing. By the way, I also think your content is amazing. So that makes two of us, but whose definition are we using? So when people are saying, okay, how do I stand out, right? What is remarkable? What does remarkable look like? What does it feel like? What does it taste like? How will I recognize it when I see it in others? And how will I recognize it if I'm doing it the right way? So this whole vague, general directive, it's a general strategy, right? And it never had any kind of tactical explanation. How do I think about it? How do I benchmark it? How can I start to stimulate this in my own mind and the mind of my team? Are we up to snuff? Are we actually differentiated? Or are we just, we use different words, but prospects in the world can't tell the difference? So I took this idea of be remarkable, put out amazing stuff. And I said, okay, well, what's really, what do people talk about? What stops the scroll? What do people share? Referrals you mentioned, right? What kinds of companies get referred? And it's not the vanilla, lame-o, same-o, middle-of-the-road, boring-ass companies. I hope I can say boring-ass because I just did twice. But it's not those companies. It's the companies that stand for something, and the CEOs and the founders of those companies that stand for something very strongly, very clearly, very authentically, and very consistently. And then they also stand against some things. So if I was to encapsulate most of the ideas in the book, they fall into three different categories. One is this contrarian slant. The second is this notion of shifting beliefs so that you become the trailblazer, you become the visionary for your industry. Some people will love you and follow you. Some people will hate you, and they will be, they will be repulsed. They will be repulsed by what you're talking about, repulsed or exhilarated. So shift beliefs. And then the third thing is your personal experience, your lived experience. That goes into the category of your battle scars, your war stories, what you've done, what you've seen, what you've learned, your personal biases, your slant, your recommendations, the direction that you want to take in your own personal and professional life, right? So when people feel stressed out, maxed out, and burned out with marketing, I think it's because they're putting this shell, they're putting all this junk on to themselves to kind of hide and conform and sound the same and look the same. A lot of personal branding is that same kind of putting on a costume, if you will, and usually it's a bad fitting suit of clothes. Market eminence goes the other way. Market eminence is stripping away the surface junk, stripping away the politeness, stripping away the need to be liked and the need to sound smart all the time. Being willing to be disliked. And one of my favorite mantras in the whole book is what I share with clients all the time. It is, if you're not willing to turn some people off, you will never turn anybody on. And so to put very specific, tactical, practical mindset, skill set, tool set, exercises, questions, mind spark questions, to-do items into this book that will help people actually operationalize that 25-year-old advice to just create amazing content. Just go out there and be a purple cow. Be remarkable. I think I have done that, and I'm happy to take checks from both Seth Godin, Gary Vee, anyone else out there who's been teaching and preaching that advice without the underlying infrastructure of how to actually get it done.
But thank you for calling out that in the entire industry, right? Because most Harvard Business Review articles are, the one question that changes everything, Net Promoter Score. And then there's entire consultancies on how to implement that, right? Strategic planning, Michael Porter. It built up an entire consulting business around one big idea. And you took the idea and then in the book gave actionable steps on how to think about it, how to do it. I remember you gave a presentation for one of the professional organizations that we're both in. And most books, I will listen to the Audible. Right then I'm like, oh no, this is one I have to buy, read, study, outline, and come back to. Yeah. It's not just a big idea. It's an actionable way to do business.
Yeah.
But it is different than your previous books. And that's one of the things, David, before I even was introduced to you, right? We had some mutual friends that introduced us years and years ago. Patience is a virtue. It's not what I have, right? So when you do it selling, do it marketing, do it speaking, it's like that bias towards action that you're known for. So you had that whole franchise, if you will, there.
Yes. How
does Market Eminence tie all that together?
Well, so it's a great question. The seeds and some of these ideas, when I look back at the Do It Marketing book and I talk about articulation and distinction, I talk about the black marker test, that we take a piece of marketing, web page, whatever, black out your logo, black out your name, compare it to 5 of your competitors. If you can't tell the difference, you have a problem. Same thing with the other books. But, more than marketing, more than speaking, more than selling, this book is really about how do I uncover and amplify through speaking, publishing, and podcasting, amplify my differentiation, amplify the impact I want to have in the world. So every little stone that you throw into the lake, the ripples are bigger, the ripples reach further. How do I do that? How do I do that in this age of AI craziness? And so it's sort of a culmination or a greatest hits, but it's all about separating yourself and elevating yourself to the top 5% of your industry. Now, the good news when I give presentations on this, I tell people there's good news and there's bad news. Number one, this is harder than it looks, but it's easier than you're making it. Like, you're totally barking up the wrong tree. Most people are. 95% of the folks that are not listening to this show right now, 95% of them are still doing it the old way. They're still working so hard to blend in. They're still working so hard to, look corporate, sound smart, be liked by everyone. The top 5% are the Mavericks. The top 5% are the ones that are getting an outsized proportion of attention and leads and talent and media and podcast invitations and book contracts. And they're in the rooms and they're on the stages and they're winning the deals that you would love to win. And the difference between what you're doing now and what they're doing, that bridge is shorter than you think. It's about 195 pages, as a matter of fact. So it's the rocket fuel that will get you from, I need to work on my marketing. No, you don't. You need to work on your market eminence. Oh, we need to have a sharper sales script. We need to have better salespeople. Not necessarily. You need to work on your market eminence. We need more leads, better leads. Not necessarily. You can convert more of the leads that you have if you had some market eminence. So the way I like to have fun with this, to answer your question a different way, Tom, the 3 previous books are white. So they're white with a kind of a black and red theme on the cover. This book is the black sheep of the family, because it is literally the little black book that will make all the difference to your marketing and your sales and your growth and your scaling strategies.
As I read it, I was like, I'm not sure if it's the prequel that sets the foundation for all the rest of them, or the summary of all of them. And I would say, while I love all 3 of the book, or all 4 of the books now, this is the one that I think, as you say, is so impactful, so timely, so timeless. And also, no matter what you're doing, marketing, sales, writing, speaking, either on stages or virtual stages.
Yes.
It applies to all of them.
Yes. And also, this is like a flourless chocolate cake. So the previous 3 books are 50 and 60,000 word monsters. This book is very short. It's 14,000 words, but it is distilled. It is pure. It is a dense, flourless chocolate cake with all of the deliciousness and calories that go with it.
And actionable.
Yes.
So, David, if somebody, is interested, what's the next step? I mean, definitely buy the book, but where can they go to connect with you and your ideas?
Sure. Well, the book has a whole bunch of companion tools, trainings, downloads, worksheets. Those are all available at marketeminence.com. And then my main website is doitmarketing.com. That's where the blog is. That's where the podcast is. There's some additional resources there that are not related to the Market Eminence book, because, Tom, as you mentioned, there are 3 little siblings of this book that are still out there. But for folks that want to go further in their market eminence journey, grab all the resources, grab all the tools, maybe grab a copy of the book if you want to, but you don't have to. Just get the free stuff at marketeminence.com, and those will serve you really well on their own.
Well, what's ordinary to you is amazing to others. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you, Tom.
After today's conversation with David Newman, I hope you see just how powerful your voice and your insights truly are. You see, you don't need to be louder. You need to be clearer. You need to be bolder. You need to be more you. That's how you're going to achieve market eminence. Not by fitting in, but by standing out. And the best way to stand out today? Targeted podcast interviews. They share your insights, your stories, your contrarian truths with the exact audience you want to serve. So here's your next step. Take one of the questions that David shares and use it to craft your next podcast interview or thought leadership piece. What do you believe that others are afraid to say? What outdated beliefs in your industry need to be challenged? Use your voice to shift belief, change conversations, and create real value. To go deeper with David's work, head over to marketeminence.com for all the free resources. And if you're ready to be a podcast guest that gets results, to go from obscure to acclaimed, well then head over and visit us at Interview Valet. Until next time, remember, what's ordinary to you is amazing to others.